Very good afternoon and a warm welcome to esteemed guest of the day, Mr. Vikas Kumar, Associate Vice President, Tata Consultancy Services, faculty colleagues and dear students. Today we are here to attend a very special session on opportunities for management graduate in digital economy. Before we begin with the session, continuing with our undying tradition, we would first pay our reverence to Goddess Saraswati. So let's visualize the presence of Almighty and seek the blessings through prayer.
कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रामृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शङ्कर प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा।
Thank you, everyone. May the divine grace of Goddess be with us today and always. So today we all have gathered here to attend the webinar on opportunities for management graduate in digital economy will enable all the students to identify the learning scope and job prospects in this fast digital economy. For this, today we have amongst us the expert speaker, Mr. Vikas Kumar. Mr. Kumar is a skilled motivator and a coach with 20 years of experience, and he inspires confidence, leads by example, and builds loyal, high-performance teams committed to customer success. He's currently working with TCS as senior consultant, insights and automation, network and consumer. Also, he has worked with Reliance Jio, Bharti Airtel, Honda. He is certified in Prince2 and certified Six Sigma Black Belt. A very warm welcome once again, Mr. Vikas. So we at GLBIMR feel delighted to organize this webinar under the visionary guidance of Shri Pankaj Agarwalji, Vice Chairman GLBIMR, and stewardship of Director Dr. Ajay Kumar Sir. The Institute offers 2 years full-time postgraduate diploma in management with objective to make the students the best management.
Not audible this side. Is it me or everyone?
I think Professor Arpana is facing some network problem. I believe so.
Yeah, no. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, now you are audible, ma'am. So in between your voice
problem is there. Yeah, network problem is there. That's what we all are facing. Okay, so the Institute offers 2 years full-time postgraduate diploma in objective to make the students the best management professors. And recently, under the stewardship of Dr. Ajay Kumar Sir, the Institute ranked first in Delhi and second in India under ranking of business schools.
Prachi ma'am, I think she's facing some network issue. So you are over.
Okay, sir. Okay, a very warm welcome to Mr. Vikas, sir. I think we have heard about GL Bajaj and had all the greetings. So maybe request you to
So before any more delay, I would request Mr. Vikas to please start the session with his presentation.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much, respected professors, Pankaj sir, Ajay Kumar sir, Dr. Ajay Kumar, Dr. Suchitra, Dr. Arvind, Professor Atul, and Professor Prachi, Professor Aparna. There are many names I can count on, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity today to interact with the future of the nation. And I would really like to make these next 1 hour 15 minutes as possible. I have a small presentation for next maybe 35-40 minutes. And next 40 minutes we can spend more on the questionnaires or as what students have. But during the presentation as well, if you have any question, either you can put in the chat window, or you can ask me to take a pause, and then we can have some question answer. Is that the presentation? I'm comfortable both the ways. Okay, so let me just quickly project my screen. Let me know if it is visible to everyone. I'll continue doing these hygiene check, because I know technology is the most creative thing happening in today's life. So we could see all these nuances of technology while we starting this session today. So when we talk about yeah, thank you. So when we talk about technology, being a very curious person, I started looking for that when exactly the technology world started. We started using this word technology. Is it really something which is being generated or hyper used during last 2 decades or 3 decades or something, or has it been used in the era of Mahatma Gandhi or in the era of Akbar or something? I mean, I've gone up to that level that is it really being far used? And what I got to know that by 1952 or till 1952, this was not really used very, very actively. And you can do a Google search. In Google search, you will find that all these words, how actively those are being used in the last few years or something. So Google shows that curve. So till 1952, it was not really used very, very actively. Now, how did it really came in existence, this word called technology? So there was someone in 1890 or so, I mean, not 1890, sorry, 1829. And this gentleman, he was looking to put together some art, craft, all these kind of things under one umbrella, or under one call out. And then he called that everything put together. He called this is technology. And that is how this world came, the word came into the existence. So, now if you look at the modern era, and you might be knowing many, scientists, one of those is American scientist Alan Kay. And if you ask him that, what is technology? So he says that technology is anything that was invented after you were born. So Alan Kay, who is a very famous scientist, he says that technology is anything that was invented after you were born. So I know that many millennials are also there on this call who were born after year 2000 or something, and they might be attending today's session. So technology is everything which is came into an existence after your birth. Now, one of my friend, when I talk to him, and he says that, and he's also a very big technocrat, he says that technology is anything that doesn't work yet. And we could see in the start of this session that technology is something which doesn't work. But with this, let me start asking one question, and you can probably put your responses in the chat. So what is the nearmost technology which really touch everyone's life on a day-to-day basis? And I would say 24/7. So what can you think nearmost one? Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, yes, you are audible, sir. Yes, you are audible, Mr. Vikas.
Yeah. So my question was that what is the nearmost thing which you can think about technology which exists on it in a day-to-day life 24/7?
I think we are
I
getting
think,
answers in chat box.
yeah, yeah. So let me see that. Mobile, social media, exactly, internet, WhatsApp, smartphones, and then very good. I think all of us have missed the electricity. Without electricity, would it be possible to have internet or WhatsApp or social media? So what I'm bringing that electricity has been in life more than several decades now, more than several decades, and we take that as granted. We take everyone is feeling is granted, but ultimately electricity is also a technology. I mean, okay, we've been studying electrical engineering, we've been studying a lot of electronics and everything, but it's a technology, but we are taking it granted. Imagine when my daughters grow up, and then a few of yours son daughters grow up, they will think that internet is granted, and internet is not a technology. So imagine that we are in 1921, 1951. If someone is asking same question, what is technology which touches your daily life, and no one is responding that internet is a technology, because everyone is taking granted that internet has been in existence, and it is granted. Anyway, the point which I'm bringing here is that the way electricity is so ubiquitous around us, so invisible around us, same way internet will be, or it is around us. And that is the era we have already gone into. That is the era we have already experiencing, and we are slowly even getting into the next level where autonomous things and other things are coming in place. Now what it is really leading into, that we are living in a very hyper connected world. When I say the world full of smart sensors, cameras, databases, intelligence around us, and then you can do a Google search that what is the most visible country in terms of having a vigilance on their citizens, and you will find China number one, and probably India is also on third or fourth, that we keep high vigilance on our citizens. So we've got cameras, surrounded by cameras. We are surrounded by multiple other sensors in our societal fabric. So we are becoming more and more transparent, and then governments are keeping watch on us. Not only the government, big companies like Google, Facebook, and everyone keep watching or keep an eye on us, that what exactly is happening, and that is all happening through multiple sensors, cameras, databases, all these things. I know this session is not about technology, so I'll not really delve much into this. Now, we also see that how different these sensors are not limited to only human, being, but these are everywhere. You talk about agriculture, you talk about pets, or you talk about medicine. Everywhere these sensors are there, and then they can provide you unimaginable rate of data at a unimaginable speed. Now, what it is really leading it to, that we can experience today, this forum is example that how can we experience the classroom setup by sitting far or sitting in our home, and then similar way your social and business encounters will happen, are happening, or I would say through virtual reality or the telepresence and everything. So many of us in last 1 year during the COVID era, they might be missing I want to really be in Europe. I want to see Europe in summer. I want to see a flower market in Thailand, or I want to be in Australia. Now all these things can be seen easily by virtual reality. People are searching home through virtual reality. People are getting operated through virtual reality. So all these things are happening, nothing new, which we are really talking. The next level of this is definitely when I come to the geospatial mapping or the databasing of at the geographic level. And that's where a lot of things in terms of autonomous cars, the satellite movements, the project by Elon Musk in terms of tube, rails, all those fast-moving transportation, everything will happen because based on this geospatial mapping. Now, with this all, what exactly, where are we heading to? I mean, many of us really ask that, okay, we have done this, we've done internet, we've done social media, we've done virtual reality, we've done now autonomous cars and everything, maybe some autonomous flying, the flights or aeroplanes or something. But where are we leading to? And this question really come quite often. Any thought around us, around this, that what exactly is going to happen next? What do we see sitting in 2031 when we have similar kind of a setup in a classroom? Many of you might have already become a professor or a teacher or something. So if your student asks that, what is now? Any thought on this? Where are we leading to? Flying car, very good. Virtual world. We are already in virtual world. That's, I mean, there's nothing. So I want to really test your imagination that what next can we think, which is not ever thought by now. Flying car is also, you might have seen in multiple movies. There's nothing new about it. Imagination becoming reality. Yeah. Machine dominant. It's a very good word, machine dominant. Yeah. So how many of you think that the world will be machine dominant, not the human dominant? And I don't think so that the world will be machine dominant. Time travel is good. I'll be really interested to live by that time, that if I can do time travel. Human art. Anyway, I'll not take much time. Now, what I'm basically going beyond this is drifting this more not on the technology, but the human side of it. So we were in the craftsmanship era around 80 years back, and it was very, very people focused. I mean, if my grandfather, my grandparent, or his father or something or grandparent, if they used to go to get a shoe, made, or a bullock cart made or something that was made customized to the need before the industrial era. If I go to in 1920s or 1910, if I go to getting my shoe made, it'll be made to my fit. And similarly, it used to happen for my shirt and pant as well. I mean, all these dressing as well. I saw those days in 1980s that we used to go to a tailor, and then he will make the dress as per our measurement. Now, what we did, we moved into the industrial era. What was industrial era? The shoes is made for masses, the dress is made for masses, and many other things, maybe spec or gadgets or many other things made for masses. That was the industrial era. And what has happened? Many of you might be knowing that from 1950 to by now, the impact of industrial era is so high that our population has grown by 3.5 times. Whatever we were there in 1950s, till 1950s, we are now 3.5 more. So we are at 7.8 billion people in the world. Because with the industrial era, a lot many things also came into existence. How do we really increase the mortality rate? How do we really make more and more consumption happening? So earlier, someone was having one bullock cart, then they moved on to one car, and then from one car to 10 cars or 6 cars. And now each one of us have probably 2 or 3 cars at our home. But there were a lot of things happening at this side. The scale was low. Just give me a moment. The scale was low. It was specialized and high cost and standalone. So I'm just taking a very repeated example of a shoe. It's just an analogy. So if you go to get a shoe made, it will be very, very costly in terms of that time of earning. and then it will be very, very standalone. So made to your fit. Sometimes even people will visit the shoemaker 2 or 3 times, or the cobbler 2 or 3 times to say that, okay, now it is pinching, now it is tight, it is loose, and all that. So those that was all the part of the process. When we got into the industrial era, it was standardized: 9 number, 8 number, 7 number, British number, American number. So it was all standardized, and it was low cost. The cost was dramatically low, and there was a value chain, there was a supply chain, there was a value chain sitting behind the product. Now we are in the hyper-connected era. In the hyper-connected era, we are once again entering into people-focused, very, very high scale, specialized, low cost, and digital ecosystem. Now I have a question. Here we were at people-focused, here we are at people-focused. What is the difference? Can someone tell me? We are back to square one, where we started from the craftsmanship era. In the hyper-connected era, we are still people-focused. Yeah. Someone, yeah. So why we call it still people focused? Customization, very good input, very good. Kanishk Gupta, we have become more inclined to customization. Exactly. We deliver what actually they want. Absolutely. So I think I should be really feeling proud. The kind of students GL Bajaj has, it shows a great amount of intelligence among the students. I really see a very, very bright future for all of you. Your questions are absolutely to the point. So what we are trying to say that now the technology has given that enablement, where if I want a shoe made to my fit sitting at home, it will be home delivered to me with a far better accuracy, with a far better delivery commitment, with a far better quality. Earlier, I used to visit for that same piece, maybe miles away or something. So industrial era came, we became asset focused, but again, we have become customer focused or people focused, but because of the enablement of the technology. Now, what are the side effects which are coming? So any other side effect, I have shown one. Privacy is a privilege. So the people who would like to have privacy beyond Facebook, beyond being watched by their mobile or something, they need to pay for it. And you will find many such gadgets coming in, which will claim that we will not track you, where exactly are you going. You will find many apps coming that will claim that we will not track your database, we will not take any clue from your database, and you can switch on to this device. You will see this world coming in next 4 or 5 years, that it will become a privilege. They will charge money for it. They will say, if the Android device which tracks each and everything of yours is available in 30,000, probably a device which is not tracking anything beyond your network or something will charge you this much of money. And it might be double, it may be triple or something. Wait for those days to come. It will be certainly a privilege. Similarly, lot of evolution of abuse and abusers is happening. And though I'm too old to really experience, because I don't go quite often on the social media platform, or I don't get indulged in the chat or something, but in your age, you might be already experiencing all these things. And there's a lot of stress. You might be knowing in South Korea, one of the highest digital stress or digital depression is found in South Korea. And there are specialized clinic for digital meditation, digital medication, and then how to really keep the young generation away from all of this stress. You can search what kind of level or what kind of stress the South Korean young people goes because of the all these digital intrusions. Now, there's another thing that there is an information overdose happening. I don't know how many of you feel, but I have 32 groups on my WhatsApp, 32 groups. And can you imagine that how do I read, how do I manage? I don't really read hardly maybe one or two groups where I see that there is something burning is happening, maybe because of pandemic or maybe because of some other reason. But I just swipe on my iPhone and I just archive. So 32 groups, and then many more other messages, good morning, good evening, Radhe Shyam, Sitaram, and all those things. Now, so that is anyway one part of information overdose, though this is not true information, but I'll come back to my office. Let me give you another example of information overdose. In office, when I sit in front of, I mean, I'm not in office, but working from home. When I sit in front of my computer, I have mail to answer, I have chat to respond, I have a call like this going on, and then I have WhatsApp, and then I have voice calls coming in. So as a human brain, as a human mind, I need to tackle all these 5 intrusions, which can happen anytime. A mail from boss can come anytime while I'm responding on the chat, Teams chat, or similarly an urgent call can come from on your voice or something. So anyway, so this is the kind of overdose even I experience, but in your age, you might be experiencing more. Now, I'll not take much time. I'll go a little faster. I've set the context. Now, what are the 8 key skills really World Economic Forum is supporting? And when I talk about 8 key skills, it is not only limited to people who are studying in the undergraduate or management graduation level, but for each one of us. In fact, I delivered a talk that why digital literacy is must for each and everyone. Everyone. I will just give you a statistics that in India, the trust on the news, on TV news is around 73%. And you can go and find it on Statistica. But at the same time, the fake news on the TV news is the highest in the world. You get my point? So as an Indian, we trust highly on the TV news, which is around 72%. The ingredient or the mix of fake news in TV news is highest in the world. So ultimately, what do we get? We get fake news. We trust it. So digital literacy is must for each and everyone. Either they are studying humanity, they are studying moral science or something. It's really, really must. Now coming here, digital use, digital rights. So these are the 8 different skill sets which World Economic Forum has. There's another saying which comes in light that 65% of today's grade school kids will end up in a job that has not been invented yet, and that is absolutely true. Absolutely, even in last decade, I have seen many such designations coming. For example, Google has a designation next billion customers, something like head next billion customers. I will also talk about one role called growth hacker. Now, growth hacker I never ever heard before 2010 when I was in my typical manufacturing kind of a job or something before I moved into telecom company. Now there are many career opportunities in terms of you to adopt that what you can really pick up, and we can probably pause here to get more deeper into this. So when you talk about at a management graduate level, I also believe that in your curriculum, you might be having many subjects which are covering the digital aspect of different career options or different fields. So you might be having a subject or a book called machine learning, which is very homogeneous in today's environment. It is required in all the fields. You might be having something on the programming, maybe a basic programming in C or Java or something. I'm just assuming, but having a knowledge of those is really must for you to become a really good manager or a good senior manager, general manager, or maybe higher in the career in this digital economy. Because at one side we are saying we live in the digital economy. At other side, if you are not digitally equipped, then it will not make sense. Now, I'm just throwing some other, I would say, next, top 7-8 career options in the next 3 to 4 years. Let me tell you, the the way the pace of technology is going on, if someone claims you that these career are for next decade, I'm telling you that's not a truth. Every 3-4 years, the career options really change, and one of the most paid career or something becomes something else which is not even listed here. I'll give you one of the example from my career. So when I was in Airtel, so Airtel was getting into this business called Wink, and you might have known this Wink music, Wink Wink songs and everything. So we were at that point of time in 2010, they were getting into Wink, and they were also getting into gaming and then other entertainment themes which need to come in the 4G era on the devices. So Airtel at that point of time hired someone from UK, and he was a hardcore gamer and someone who was not even 11th grade passed, but very hardcore gamer with a 1 million, some 60-70 lakh rupees worth of package of for a year, and he was just a gamer. So can you imagine that? Our parent at home say don't play games and video games and there's that, it'll not pay you money or something. But look at that guy. He was not even 11th grade qualified, but he was a hardcore gamer, won certain contest. In fact, he won one of the very, very esteemed contest, and that is the reason he was hired. But that skill become his career. So similarly, when I say that, tomorrow you never know that you can hack an autonomous car and then probably you become the highest paid, career for you. So let me start with the business analytics. But by this time, do we have any question? Any interaction you want to have? So Kanish Gupta is asking that what will be the major disruption in technology? See these views that what will be the major disruption in technology will vary person to person, because it's such a wide subject and very difficult to cover all the reading or all the trends, maybe even in this life. So it totally depends that the kind of reading you do or the kind of focus you have or something. If you ask me, the biggest disruption in the human life will happen when the technology really, and it's already entered through this COVID and it's really expedited, when it gets into genomics, and then your clones are there, and then you can probably transfer your mind or transfer your life to another one. So that is the biggest disruption. I don't know how as a human being are we going to really tackle it. What are the protocols which are being defined? What are the boundaries which are being defined? But when that happens, that is the biggest disruption as a human which we can face. That is what I think. I mean, I don't know the roots of those or granularity of that technology, that how is it taking shape, but that is the one. And if you have another view, I really love the constructive criticism as well, because that gives me a learning that what is the young generation thinking, what will be the most disruptive technology intervention. So if you have any other view, I would really welcome to hear that. Any other question? I think this session is more about career, so let's be focused on that. I brought in a technology view just to set the context, that how the things are shaping up, what are the things which need to be kept in mind. Okay, so no more question. Someone, section C. Oh, okay, it's an attendance. Okay. Okay. So I've switched off the chat window because that's really interfere my presentation. In case you have any question, you can probably speak. I don't have any problem. So business analytics is one of the most interesting area. And what does a business analytics? I'll just quickly cover all these, eight, nine different job roles. So a business analytics, what it does really. So something, a gentleman who is really aware about the business where they live in. So for example, if you're in telecom, then you know about the telecom business. For example, if you are in medicine business or a medical business, you know about medical, you're in healthcare, and then you mingle, or then you mix that business knowledge with the analytical knowledge. So when you bring a lot of industry trends, a lot of your consumer trends, a lot of your supplier trends or stakeholder trends, and mix with the business and give a new insight to your company. So that is the work of business analytics. And I have worked earlier with Professor Atul in the Airtel days, and I know he was in marketing, and marketing is completely dominated by this particular skill set, which is called business analytics. So marketing need to have the intelligence of the telecom, that how the technology will play in the telecom. Where is my 3G coming? Where is my 4G coming? When is my 3G coming, 4G coming? What kind of recharge I can have in 3G, or what kind of plans I can have in 4G? And then with the mix of a lot of customer data, that what kind of customers do I have? What is the demography I have? What is the base I have? What is competition doing? And then you mix all this data, become a business analytics. You choose business analytics as a career. Now, you might ask that, okay, how do I really see as a career? So a lot of business analytics really get into a very high level of career. So you move with that intelligence to maybe next level of your career, maybe a marketing head or a sales head, or maybe operations head. Because once you have this knowledge of business and data together and putting, how to play with the numbers, how to infer the numbers and everything, then things become far more easier for you. Digital marketing and advertising, very focused career, very focused career in marketing. If someone say that I know everything in marketing by digital or something, I say he's telling lie, because every year you have a different TikTok, or TikTok, which really supersede or overlay your existing marketing tools. So till yesterday, if you were dependent totally on the digital marketing side on Facebook, today someone like TikTok will be born. Tomorrow some TikTok will be born. Day after tomorrow something else will be born, where people will move, and then people will be your consumers will be more there on those platforms. So you never know then what kind of but it's a very evolving industry. One needs to really keep a complete eye on it. But people in the digital marketing who know the heck of it, who know the granularity of it, they're really in a high demand, and very highly paid, not only for the job but also for starting their own business. So it's a very good profession to choose your own business as well. Now we come to the healthcare and insurance. With this pandemic and everything, you can see that how the healthcare has become far more far more easy to adopt at the home. When you are sitting at home, you are able to consult with a doctor, you are able to consult with the medicine provider, your medicines are coming at home. So if you see all these businesses, how these are transforming. So healthcare is not a doctor dominant business or the doctor dominant industry as on date. It is far more, it is a e-commerce industry, it's a supply chain industry, or it's a supply chain business, or it's many other legs and arms of the business. I'll give you a very good example here. And there is a very famous book by it's called You Too Can. The author name Prakash or something. The author name Prakash has been CEO of PepsiCo earlier, and he has written this book called You Too Can. And if you read this book, he basically brings some 7-8 different industrialist life theory or the bibliography about that, how did they become the businessman, what kind of business they got into. So ThyroCare, if you talk about ThyroCare, the owner of the ThyroCare says that I'm not in the blood testing business. I'm not in the blood testing business. And that is the message he gives to his employees. He says, I'm in more of a logistic business, that the blood is collected from a point of source, and then it is rapidly sent to the locations where it need to be tested. So we are more in the logistic business, less in the blood testing business, because blood testing is anyway done by automatic machines. Those are German machines or Japanese machine. You put the blood, and those are automatic, and the report comes out. So it's a very simplest part of the business, testing the blood and giving the report. Even those reports which come with the name of Dr. Namrata or Dr. something, those are all automatic, all automatic. The only thing or the most critical part of that business, or which is a healthcare business, is the logistic and the supply chain. Yeah. So all this, when I'm giving you these views, because sometimes you might be thinking that as a management graduate, what can I do in healthcare? But the area which I'm trying to highlight, that the courses which you're studying supply chain, you're studying some part of the manufacturing, you're studying some part of the accounting or the financial planning. Each one plays vital role in this career, in these careers. Similarly, e-commerce, I need not to really talk about. Agri-tech. Now, how many of you think that agri-tech is not a very fancy industry to get into, or a career to get into? And I'll take a pause here to see some chat. Okay, I think there is a question. How can we get into TCS? And I know, when I interact with the institution, that is the first question which comes, that how can we get the job in TCS? Now, TCS is a very fair policy in terms of hiring. There are few online online competition which happen through Code Vita or through many other challenges. So you go through those. There are links available for those, and once you qualify, then you get into TCS. For TCS, any fresher hiring doesn't happen through any other channel. It's through competition and through some hacking events. These are the two only gateways for freshers to get into TCS. Skills and tools. I will come in maybe next one or two slides. But I would say that be aware about the industry, be aware about the technology, and be good in the coding. If you really want to get into the analytics is far more Python driven, or maybe R. So you need to be really good in Python and R with your numbers, the AML side of the Python, not the application programming of the Python, but the artificial intelligence and machine learning side of the Python. So agri-tech, I was taking a pause on agri-tech, that how many of you feel that it's not really a very fancy area to get into, or it's not an industry to get into and all that? Or I would ask this question other way around, that how many of you believe, or how many of you plan to get into agri-technology or agri-related business as a career? There is no answer. So Dr. Atul, none of your students really want to get into agri-related business. Why? India's 62% or maybe 60% economy is based on agriculture, and India is one of the most prominent player in the agriculture across the world. So, but let me throw some of the statistics to you, and let me also give you some tips and suggestions that how should you really make your career. So don't follow a very, very defined or very, very pronounced call for your career. When I say pronounced, or business analytics, or my cousin is doing good in business analytics, let me do it. No, that is not the way. In the digital economy, one of the best thing to work is that look at the waste, look at the problem of the society, look at the problem of the industry, look at the problem of the business, and get into that area. And I'll give you a simple analogy. Now, if you talk about agri-tech, now India grows as much as food that it can feed all the population of its own. But still, billions of people, I mean, at least millions of people sleep without food in India. Now, why? Why does it happen? Because of the food waste. When I talk about food waste, I'm not talking about the chapatis getting waste or the dishes at home getting waste, but I'm talking about the food which is generated or sourced at the agricultural land or at your farms or your or your garden, food gardens or fruit gardens or something, or different. Yes. So someone has said mismanagement of resources. So when I say mismanagement of resources, it's not about only one resource. So take the wastage starting from your farm to the point of sale. How much food grain get wasted because of rain, because of a storm, because of fire, because of many other natural calamities, or because of some conflict between two farmers at their juncture of their agricultural land, and they try to damage each other's crop or something. So there is so much of wastage. Approximately 7% food get directly wasted from the time it is sourced and by the time it reaches to point of sale. So that is one area. Now if you look at all this, the amount of grain which we or the wheat we produce, it can feed whole Australia for years, but sometimes it gets rotted down. Sometimes the mouse or some pets or something, they make whole waste of all these agricultural things. So yeah, absolutely no proper management. We are almost in 10th place, last, and very good insight. So the point is that there is still a huge amount of scope in agri-tech if you really want to make big in this area. And food and water is going to be the next gold when we really get into it. The reason is that look at, people are not growing in the most of the developed economy. If you go to US or you go to any developed economy, I used to stay in Denmark for 2.5 years. They don't really grow much of food on their own. They all import. So food is going to be a very, very precious thing for a human to live. And similarly, like water. So all these two areas, water and food, really they have a very wide scope to get into, and then managing those supply chain, managing those resources where the food wastage happens. Similarly, we go to Growth Hacker. I don't know how many of you know Growth Hacker. So someone, especially people at the startup side, they talk about growth hacking, and the growth hackers are completely focused on growth of the product, growth of the organization, growth of the services. So they just focus on these 2-3 things. So if they have been hired for Urban Clap, then they will just focus on how can I grow Urban Clap's reach, how can I get more and more customers in the less and less price. So that is called growth hacking. Now growth hacking comes at certain cost as well. Sometimes venture capitalists, they infuse a lot of money in startup, and then you start giving a lot of free things to get more customers. But growth hacker is also a very good career option if you really want to. And growth hackers become CEO of the organization. The moment if you're getting into a startup and you become a growth hacker, you give a good growth or something, there are chances are bright for you to become the CEO or the head of that business for the startup. UX UI designer, very, very known. The apps or the websites which are intuitive in nature get more and more customer eyeballs, get more and more customer engagement. That becomes very, very highly sellable service or a product. CRM, maintaining the customer relationship, is very, very crucial in nowadays. I'll give you one analogy. In a non-digital world, if a shoemaker is there, and again you will say that hey, this guy takes too much of shoe example, but that's a very simple to give. In a non-digital world, so you have to move from one shop to another shop to see, okay, I want to now see another brand or something. But in a digital world, your competitor just sit one click ahead, one click. So you are at Flipkart, just one click ahead, Amazon is there. So you immediately lose your your customer immediately. Now many of my friends or something, they sometimes they should be get into the blogging, should we get into some small video making or something. And I give this tip that please be mindful that you have to be on your toes, or you have to be really, really very active, whatever you do digitally, because your competition sit just a click ahead. So if you want to lose your audience, you're a blogger, you can lose your audience maybe in a day if you don't post a relevant thing to them. Or if you're a vlogger who posts a lot of blogging related thing, you can lose your audience completely maybe in 8-10 days if you don't really give them a related content or something. So maintaining a customer relationship in a B2B business, in a B2C business is very, very crucial. And then one can really get into that kind of career as well. People who love to serve, people who have empathy, people who love to interact with human being and different people, they can get into CRM or digital account manager kind of thing. I have seen a lot of good account managers who have very good relationship skill, getting money out of the customer pocket when we do collection, especially in the telecom business side. And more than me, Professor Atul might be having all these stories because he was in the B2B business at that point of time, some point of time. So this is more on the career path. Now one thing really come that how do we really get be ready for the future of work? What are the skill sets which are required for the future of work? But any question or anything, I can probably take 2-3 more slides, or we can take a pause there and then we can open the conversation.
I think, sir, you can finish that. Then we can take the question answer at the last stage.
Yeah. So what are the main success factors for the development of innovative startups? Success factors. So for me, as I said that in the technology world, you will have a different viewpoint from everyone. But for me, solving a problem, if you are really, really solving a problem of society or an individual or an industry, that is the most critical success factor. The Me Too kind of thing doesn't work in startup. If he has got an urban club, then let me also get an urban company or an urban club. Or if he's got a Flipkart, let me also open e-commerce or a shopclue.com or something, and then things will get sold. So you have to really solve a problem of a particular industry. That what is the problem I'm solving? Am I solving a supply chain problem? Am I solving an availability problem? Am I solving a distribution problem? So for example, if you see the trend of these e-commerce, and then especially I was reading, there is a company called Carrot Lane, and Carrot Lane is now with the Titan. They've acquired some 26% stake in Carrot Lane. Now, if you see the Carrot Lane customer acquisition, what they say that most of their customer come from the tier 2 or tier 3 cities. So people like in Delhi and Mumbai are not customer to Carrot Lane. The reason is that Carrot Lane is solving a problem of distribution. A very good ornament or very good, some ring or some ear pins or something are not available in the tier 2, tier 3 cities because there is no PC Chandra jeweler there is no Radhe Shyam jeweler there, or there is no Bhimji Javeri there. So there are not good design, but people stay there, and that is the reason they go onto the Carrot Lane and then they buy from there. So they are solving a distribution related problem. Now you go to some all these Amazon or something, Flipkart. If you see the last 10 years evolution about Flipkart or Amazon, they have shortened their supply chain dramatically. So they are probably solving a problem of a supply chain, that how do we make things available as fast as possible to my customer, so he doesn't feel going to the market, he doesn't feel going to the brick and mortar shop or something. So address a problem, do a design thinking, do a customer journey mapping about a problem, that what problem customers are facing, what problem industry is facing, and you will be able to build a very good startup. And let me also tell you, sometimes people come to me that most of the problems are solved in every area, the startups are there and everything. But I say a very common thing, that till the time the human are there in this universe, the problem will exist. With digital, if you think that my 100 problems are solved, let me tell you, 200 problems are there with digital, 200 problems. And one of the most critical problem is the distraction. destruction, distress, then depression. So if one technology has given you one solution, probably it might have thrown some 10 challenges on you. So take those as an opportunity. How can I really address those challenges? How can I address those problems? One shall go to more may come. Okay. Okay, let me move to next slide. So these are the 3-4 skills which are very, very crucial in any part of the work. I mean, you can hear Michelle Obama's speech when Trump came in, and then Obama, she gave her last speech. She talked about most of all these skills. I mean, thinking critically, analyzing inferences, evaluation, claims, weighing decisions. So how critically can you think? When you talk about critically, you don't criticize someone to say that, oh, this is wrong or something. You try to weigh different aspects, that what can be under this or something. For example, I'll share my individual practice. 2-3 days back, my daughter was showing me one clip that where Shivraj Singh Chauhan was telling that in a TV conversation that we are more focused on election. Oh, sorry, not focused on election, but on COVID. And this was in Hindi, that हम लोग चुनाव पे ज़्यादा ध्यान रख रहे हैं, नहीं COVID पे ज़्यादा ध्यान रख रहे हैं. And then this clip was there. I can't believe that politicians can be so irresponsible. At least Shivraj Singh Chauhan. I mean, he's a repeated chief minister there or something. Then I looked at that clip, and you guys can go if it is there on your WhatsApp, and you will find that the lips and the script is not really matching. Someone has really played with that thing and then circulated that script. So one has to be critical in that thinking. When I say thinking critically, it's not criticizing someone, but critically in the thinking. Can I look at something? Can this really happen? Few days back, I saw one clip of one image of Hema Malini being circulated and being MP at that point of time, and then she was like not very well dressed and all that. I mean, I was completely shocked that no, a MP cannot do this kind of a thing. Then I went to Google, check, and then I saw that yes, the image was morphed, and many such incidences are there. So thinking criticality is one. Thinking creatively, how creatively I can solve the problem, how creatively I can find the problem is also very critical. Many times in organization, I would ask people that, do you have any problem in your function? No, we are doing very well. We don't have any problem. Everything is very smooth. Our MIS comes on time. This is that. Our this is growing. Our that is happening. So people don't know what is the problem. In the spiritual world, we call it awareness. That we are aware about the body. That what is going wrong in my body. Similarly, we should be aware. We should be creatively aware about organization. That what is going wrong. What is the problem which I can solve. Communicating effectively. Now, one thing which I really tell to my team as well in TCS, that please be vocal and please be presentable in this era. See what is happening, I'll tell you. And that's the biggest challenge which my team is facing. I don't know. See what happens that when you are in office, and if you have an idea, you get into your boss room, you got a whiteboard, and then you start drawing, sir, okay, I think about this, I think about that, we can do like this, we can do like that. And your boss is convinced, you are convinced, you are home, you are happy, he is happy. In this world, everything you don't have a whiteboard. I mean, you have whiteboard, but those are not as creative or those are not as good or something. So you have to put up everything on a presentation or maybe some narratives or something, and then you have to explain it very, very systematically. You can't explain it like you're sitting in a whiteboard, standing on a whiteboard with some body language. There is no body communication happening in this screen era, or in this pandemic era, where working from home or something. So that communication has become, how effectively you can communicate has become one of the most crucial techniques, especially in the organizations where the visibility becomes a challenge. That how do I become visible by my work, by my act or something. So it's very, very critical. Similarly, how do I interact effectively? I see a lot of stress because of this pandemic, and people throw that stress sometime on the call or being on the video or something, or they get dominated on to get the work done. Now I'll tell you another example from a corporate life. Suppose you are a boss and you want to get a work done from your colleague or from your team in office environment. Then what will you do? I need this by 5 o'clock today. And then what will you do? You will visit his or her desk maybe 5 times during that day. That whether he's working on that job or not, whether he's not spending time here and there or not. Now, in the work from home scenario, imagine what happens. You give that work, and then you can't just, max to max, you can poke on the teams or something that say that what is the status, what is this, that, nothing else. Now that guy is watching movie or a game or something you don't know. So how do you interact effectively? How do you really get the work done by persuasion power, negotiation power, all those things? That is most very, very critical for the future skills. I've got a blog as well on this on my LinkedIn, and many of you can read about that blog. Yeah. So I think we can end it here. We're already at around 240, 235. Next, I've brought in some clips as well for you guys to see that, how these things are being talked about, not only by me, but many other, these kind of things you can see in newspapers as well. So can you think inside the box? You're hired. So this was from PwC. Similarly, the Accenture, recently their CEO said that I want to make Accenture consultant as a data-based storyteller. And how can you tell a very good influential story with the data? And I do run some of the session on because I'm in the analytics and automation. I do run some session that how do you become a data storyteller? Yeah, I can probably just give a glimpse, but I'll take a pause here. I think next 10 minutes or 15 minutes we can spend on some question answers, maybe by faculties, maybe by students, and I'll be glad to answer with my best available intelligence.
Okay, so what a knowledge enriching session, I must say, Mr. Kumar. Once again, many, many thanks for such a beautiful presentation, and so many things you have included in this, and lot of latest trends that is there in the digital world. So I'm sure students could definitely got a lot of insights from you, what is happening in digital world, and they are supposed how they can be more digitally savvy. And you covered almost every part and answered the queries of the students. Anyone has any query, they can write in the chat box. Students, you may write your queries in the chat box. Meanwhile, Mr. Kumar would like to ask that, what do you think, which sectors are having more opportunities in the digital economy? Specifically, if we talk about students.
So what and again, these are my individual views, for the next at least 3-4 years, healthcare will be definitely in focus. And I need not to really talk about reasons, how the pandemic is playing. So healthcare is one, education is another one. I should say that in education, what is happening, there are a lot of edutech startups which are already in place. But in healthcare, in education, the quality will matter most. So how can you still solve a problem with the high quality? Because as you said that, as we discussed earlier, that you've got a management management courses institution which is giving management courses. There are several below the tail institution as well. So each one is not at par, and people who get really quality education, quality institution, they get very good placed in the market or the industries. They get good livelihood, good reputation. So similarly in the healthcare, you will find some medicines or some treatment happening by some doctors or something. Some quality healthcare is coming at a price maybe a little expensive, but quality will matter a lot in education and healthcare, and the industry demand will be. So the third thing is agriculture, and that's agriculture and especially food and water. I really think that if the next world war happens, I should not use this word, but it will be around these only. Water is one of the most critical thing which is going to be very, very crucial in the coming years. And when I talk about water, it is about drinkable water. And you might have seen that recently a technology has already been developed which convert the sea water into a drinkable water. But how that technology is technology reaches to the masses, that is the thing which needs to be watched.
Yes, and the similar question is there from Dr. Shuchita also. Can you please give some idea about application of technology in agriculture? So you talked about water, and what about food? Because we've seen that India is already growing quite a good in terms of exporting from the agriculture sector. So specifically, if you talk about application in the food in terms of the farming and all technology application.
So if you talk about agriculture, first of all, I'm not an agriculture expert, but I do keep a track of the trend. So first is that how can we really reduce the wastage? How can we eliminate the wastage? So first and foremost focus should be there. So someone who is trying to get a startup into that area, probably study maybe few months about all these things and then get it. So wastage. The second thing is that how do I make resource efficient? When I say resource efficient, it may be energy, it may be power, it may be water, it may be even the fertilizer or many other things. So because all these resources get into the costing side of the agriculture because the farmers are not able to afford fertilizer, they're not able to afford electricity, they're sometimes not able to afford water or something to do all this agricultural thing. So resources management can be one. Then there is a huge, I would say, in the agriculture side, one of the most crucial thing is the data is not there. In many industry, you will find that data is automatically being generated, and on the data side, probably I can talk an hour or 2 hours or something. So, for example, if you go to social media, now you are at Facebook headquarters. Now, at Facebook headquarters, you get all machine learning ready data, which can be immediately get into the algorithm and can be immediately mined or can be immediately inferred with certain insights. But on the agriculture side, the data is not available. So opportunities are where the problem exists. So problem exists in the agriculture side, the data is not there. So how can I use the unstructured data to make some inferences for next decade? And then how can I make agriculture ready where the data which is being generated is becoming machine learning ready data. So which can be utilized immediately in the machine learning without any data transformation or data structure change or something. So there is a huge opportunity in a unstructured or unorganized industry rather than an organized industry.
Yes, very well discussed. And one question from which is coding language. Which coding language should be learned? In the case he wants to get into Java, Python, JavaScript, what would you suggest at the initial stage of the students?
Okay, how do you put it? Yeah, you are audible. Sorry.
Language. Which coding language should be learned? That by mistake he has given me the private message, so it's not there in the chat box.
Sure.
Which coding language should we learn? Java, Python. So for the initial stage, if a student want to get into that.
Yeah. So I think let me go back to this slide. So if you really want to get into UI, UX and all that, so then definitely you need to be a very good front end developer. I mean, I'm not talking about the management side, but you should be knowing the front end things. Now you still can manage this. Managing a UI UX team and doing the UI UX are two different things. But yes, this is true that to manage a UI UX thing, you need to know the technology, but you need not to be yourself, doing all those things. Now, if you want to UI UX, then definitely any front end technology, Angular, Java, the full stack Java or something, those are much more crucial. If you want to go more in the business analytics, then Python is one of the most. Now there is another language which has come called Go. I think Go is being starting to rise. So Go, I've not really studied much about Go and something, but yes, but Python is definitely the talk of the hour currently. If you want to go study in the CRM, then you should be really knowing how these CRM technology works. Something like Oracle, something like Sibyl, or maybe SAP, PeopleSoft, and all that. So You should be knowing the complete journey of a customer. That how do they buy, when they buy, how do they make payment, if the payment is not done. So all these, so that CRM, all that healthcare, insurance, most of, I would say, if someone is getting into healthcare, a mix of CRM or a mix of analytics will really be a good skill set to get into. Digital marketing, you should be knowing all these platform, Adobe or many other digital marketing tool, or you should be knowing the complete social media, because each social media has got different kind of a digital marketing stack of their own. Google has got a different one, Facebook has a different one. So you should be knowing all this. And let me tell you, with my experience, is the most diverse, I would say, technology stack, because completely having a complete control and complete knowledge about it, and then making some business out of it is really very, very difficult. And that is the reason is much more in demand and very good, very highly paid currently.
So what I extract from this answer, that first you need to be very clear in which department you want to go, in which sector you want to go, and accordingly you should start learning, because it's quite wide in nature.
Yeah.
And to be more specific, it would be easier to go ahead with the option. Okay, and last question, a very obvious one: how to be part of CCS or any MNC through marketing domain? This will be the last question from the students. How to be the part of TCS?
So, you might have read a article which came recently in Economic Times around 8-10 days back. Most of the companies are now, I'll talk TCS. I have already given an answer that for freshers,
Yes.
that's the only channel which is available, which is through different coding platforms. Now, the other one is that how do you really want to be? One is that whatever placement happened through your placement cell during the final year or something, you invite the different industries, and then the interviews or the tests are taken, and accordingly the placements are done. But if one is really curious to go beyond this, then each technology company has got their own platform. For example, Amazon has their own platform to crack the code and then hire people. Similarly, Google has got its own platform, and then there are many common hackathons which happens across the industry. So one should be really visible on those hackathon, on those platforms, to get into very, very highly paid organization, or very, very esteemed organization. So I would recommend that people who are really, really tech savvy, along with the management qualification what they're currently having, they can definitely go for hackathon. People who are just focused on the management thing, I would say, become better in making something like a business analytics kind of a skill, becoming good in playing numbers, becoming good in forming a strategy or something. At a management graduate level, those are some critical things, and those things I have already listed, like being a critical thinker or a creative thinker and all that.
Yes. So indeed, your session was a complete package for a student, and it's again up to them how do they leverage this opportunity. So thank you once again, Mr. Vikas, for sparing your valuable time, and it was a great session from you, and we really look forward for many more such sessions in future as well. I would request IT team to please display the token of gratitude. We would like to extend our thankfulness to Mr. Kumar for sparing his precious time and enlightening all of us with practical corporate scenario and the real scenario of digital world. So here we extend our thankfulness with this certificate of gratitude. Thank you so much once again. And now I would be very thankful to our director sir as well, Dr. Ajay Kumar sir, for providing us this learning platform. And formally, I thank all the faculty members, all students for being part of this session. So here we are ending the session. And thank you so much, Mr. Vikas.
Thank you everyone. And thanks again to Dr. Suchitra, Dr. Ajay, Professor Atul, Professor Aparna, Dr. Prachi, many of you. And I really wish all the best to your students. I really look forward to that, each one of us really creating the name for this institution and become a good alumni, because alumni is really, really strong thing for an institution. And I really look forward to making an example that how the students are going to create in future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas.
Thank you, Professor Atul.